The Nigerian Governors Forum (NGF) has said subsidies payment on premium motor spirits (PMS) have affected revenue inflow into the federal account, adding that 30 states may not be able to pay salaries in the coming months because of dwindling federal allocation. The forum made this known in a memo forwarded to the chairman of the House of Representatives Ad Hoc Committee investigating the volume of daily fuel consumption in Nigeria. It added that with the projected decline in gross distributable federation revenues in 2022, fiscal deficits and the coming into effect of the Petroleum Industry Act, gross oil and gas revenues are likely to dwindle than currently projected because of the new fiscal terms and the earmarking of deductible revenues specified in the PIA. To speak further on this, TV360's correspondent Deji Badimosi joins us now. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, what do you make of the recent warning of the Nigerian Governors Forum saying that the shrinking remittance to Federation accounts will affect payment of salaries?
Well, it is nothing new. I mean, the governors had said this in the past, some time ago, maybe sometime last year. They did send a memo demanding that subsidy be removed. And of course, the reason why they're really concerned is because, you know, the way we operate the subsidy regime in this country. Remember, it is NNPC that imports petrol into the country. And what NNPC does is that it takes whatever expenses it spends, you know, whatever expenses now it makes on the importation of petrol, the shortfall now, that's the subsidy now, it removes it from whatever it makes. Remember, whatever the NNPC makes in terms of oil sale now is supposed to go into the Federation account. But when NNPC now takes out the expenses on the import of refined petrol, usually it's left with nothing to give to the Federation account. And it's what goes into the Federation account that is shared by the entire state. So, for instance, for some time now, we've been hearing of NNPC not making any remittance at all to the Federation account after taking away its expenses now on the importation of petrol. So, in essence, what we are doing is that whatever we make from the sale of crude oil now, we essentially spend in subsidizing the sale of petrol in this country. And it's a reason why people, quite a number of people now have been pushing for the removal of this subsidy, because as we speak today, Nigeria is not making much in terms of oil, crude oil sales. I mean, you sell crude oil, you import refined petrol. You bring in the refined petrol, you sell the refined petrol at a hugely subsidized price. So in essence, you're not making anything. So the NNPC is not remitting anything to the Federation account. It means the states are not getting much to share. At the end of the month, anytime they have this FAC meeting, the revenue now that is distributed to the various states is actually lean. And, you know, most of these states actually rely on what they get from the federal purse. So with the exception of probably Lagos and Rivers State. So they're getting revenue now from the Federation account. It means for most of them, it will be difficult to pay salaries. It will be difficult for them to meet their obligations. So it's a reason why the governors are crying, and it's a reason why they've been pushing for the removal of subsidies, Simi.
Brings to fore the question of financial independence of state government. Now, do you see this happening anytime soon?
Well, financial independence of the state governments, it depends on what you mean, because to some extent, the states are financially independent. What the only difference is that, well, the bulk of their revenue, if you like, comes from, for most of them now, the bulk of their revenue comes from the Federation account. So it comes from the central government. But the truth is that some states are actually financially independent. They do not rely on this federal revenue. A state like Lagos, for instance, you look at its internally generated revenue, it's really huge. As a matter of fact, it can actually do without what is coming from the Federation account. But how many states are like Lagos? Not many of them, very few of them. So that's the reason why you hear people say some states are actually not viable. You take away these federation accounts, some states will actually go bankrupt and would find it very difficult to exist. So it's up to these state governors now that, to develop, to think, create avenues with which to generate revenue internally and not rely on what comes from the center. But of course, it's difficult for some of them. And for some of them, it's just a case of, not really thinking deeply now. And the money that comes from the center has made some of them become very lazy. But with the way things are going, with the way things are going, it's becoming clear. It's becoming clear that states that do not think deeply of generating their own revenue, that's internally generated revenue now, they would find it very difficult to survive, because payment of salary will become a very big problem. Meeting their other obligations too would become very, very challenging. So it's up to the state governors, it's up to the governors who are coming in to think of creative ways now of generating revenue internally and not rely on what comes from the center, Simi.
Badimosi, many thanks for your contribution.